Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. My name's Jordan, and I live in a quiet neighborhood tucked at the edge of a mid-sized town. Nothing much ever happens here. It's the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked during the day. Kids ride their bikes until the streetlights flicker on, and the loudest sound at night is usually the breeze pushing against the trees. But that all changed last Thursday. I was working late from home. I'm in IT, so my job revolves around fixing problems without ever needing to leave my desk. Around 11 p.m., I was finishing a remote patch on a client's system when I noticed a strange alert pop up on my phone. It wasn't a text or an email. It wasn't even from any of my apps. At first, I laughed. I thought maybe it was a test alert gone wrong or a prank. But when I swiped it away, another one immediately replaced it. This time, it included a location, our county, and a hotline number to call if I'd been exposed. Exposed to what? I tried flipping on the local news, but the channel wouldn't load. I tried 3 more stations. Nothing. Every screen was either black or displaying a generic message about technical difficulties. My gut twisted. I'm not easily spooked, but something about the silence on the airwaves felt wrong. Then came the sirens. I rushed to the window and saw emergency vehicles speeding down the main road a few blocks away. No lights, just the sound. Ambulances, police cruisers, military jeeps. A convoy. Not something you ever expect to see in your neighborhood. That's when I realized this wasn't a drill. This was real. I shut off my lights, locked every door and window, and turned my phone's brightness all the way down. My heart was pounding, but I needed to stay calm. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew enough to trust my instincts, and they were screaming at me to stay hidden. I messaged my cousin Nate, who lives across town. He's a prepper, the kind of guy who always has an answer for everything. He replied almost instantly. "Don't leave. Something's wrong. People are changing. Stay inside, lock everything." I asked what he meant by changing, but I never got a reply. About 30 minutes later, I heard the first knock at my door. It was slow, measured. A fist, not a palm. Not like someone needing help, more like someone testing something. I peeked through the peephole. It was my neighbor, Mr. Lambert. Or, at least, it looked like him. But his head was tilted at an unnatural angle, like his neck had been dislocated. He was twitching slightly, jerking like a puppet on strings. His skin had gone pale, almost bluish in the moonlight. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and empty. He raised a hand and scratched at the door, not knocking now, just scraping. Slowly, repetitively. Like he was trying to remember how to do something he used to know. I stepped back. No way was I opening that door, not even for him. Then I noticed something smeared on the glass window beside the porch. Dark. Sticky. It didn't take much imagination to figure out what it was. I turned away from the door and headed toward the back of the house, careful not to make any noise. I needed to see if anyone else was outside, if this was just some awful, isolated incident, or if it was spreading. I crept into the kitchen, slipped behind the blinds and peered out the window. And my stomach dropped. 3 more people were in the street. They weren't walking right, more like shambling. Their heads jerked side to side, sniffing the air like dogs. One of them stopped at a parked car and started pounding on the hood. Another dropped to the ground and began crawling, elbows and knees grinding on the pavement as they dragged themselves forward. I watched them for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My phone buzzed again. Another alert. Stay indoors. Do not engage. Do not attempt to leave your residence. A cure is being researched. Remain calm. A cure? That confirmed it. This wasn't a hoax. This was a real outbreak. I ducked down and backed away from the window. My mind was racing. Was it airborne? Waterborne? What did exposure mean? Could they see me? Smell me? Then I heard something much, much worse. Glass breaking. Not from my house, but close, maybe 2 doors down. A scream followed. Short, muffled, then silence. I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. It had begun. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Not with the scraping sounds outside my door. Not with the occasional screams echoing in the distance, then abruptly cutting off like someone hitting mute on reality. I sat in the hallway with the lights off, my back against the wall and a kitchen knife in hand. Not that I had any clue how useful that would be. It was just something to hold, something that made me feel like I still had a bit of control. Around 3 a.m., everything went eerily still. No sirens, no screams, no footsteps. Just silence. Thick, suffocating silence. I should have felt relieved. I didn't. Silence meant they were either gone or waiting. When the sun finally crept over the rooftops, casting long shadows across the neighborhood, I dared to peek outside again. The street looked abandoned, but not in the peaceful Sunday morning kind of way. In the aftermath of something awful kind of way. Mr. Lambert was gone. So was the sticky smear on my front window. But what made my blood turn cold was what someone or something had scratched into my mailbox. Join us. Deep grooves, almost clawed, and a strange half-circle symbol underneath like a crescent with dots inside it. It looked almost ritualistic. I stepped back from the window and double-checked every lock in the house. Then I turned off my phone's auto updates, shut off the Wi-Fi, and switched to offline mode. I didn't want anything pinging me by accident, especially not them. That's when I realized something. I hadn't seen a single bird. No chirps, no wings flapping, no flocks moving overhead. It was like nature had just paused or fled. Later that morning, I managed to get through to Nate. He sent me a video. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. It was filmed on what looked like a gas station security camera, time-stamped just before midnight. Oh, a man runs into frame, bleeding from the arm, waving frantically toward the station doors. Before the door even opens, a figure slams into him from the side. Not just slam, slaunches into him like a battering ram. The two go down, and that's when I saw it clearly. The attacker's face was wrong. Slack in some parts, stretched in others, with a wide, lipless mouth full of chipped teeth that looked too large. Its fingers weren't clawed, but they moved like they had extra joints, snapping back and forth in jagged, unnatural spasms. The creature didn't bite, not exactly. It gnawed, fast and messy. The man didn't even have time to scream before more poured into the frame. 6, 7, 8, all of them looking more broken than the last. The video cut out just as they began to turn on each other. I didn't respond. I just sat there, holding my breath, staring at the screen. Then Nate texted one more line. The virus doesn't just kill, it rewrites. Rewrites? What did that even mean? I asked him to explain, but again, no response. That's the last I heard from Nate. I spent the rest of the day barricading the house, moved furniture in front of doors, nailed boards across the back windows. I had a small supply of canned food and bottled water, enough for maybe a week if I stretched it. As night fell again, I tried to prepare for another long stretch of waiting. but something had changed. I could feel it. Around midnight, the power went out. All of it. Every light, every hum. My refrigerator stopped buzzing. The heating cut off. The house dropped into a dead, consuming quiet. I checked the breakers, nothing tripped. I opened the fuse box. No damage. It wasn't just me. The whole grid was down. I looked out the window again and saw the same thing everywhere. Dark houses, blacked out streets, dead streetlights. Then I noticed something else. Movement. Not in the street this time. In the trees. Dozens of pale shapes drifting silently between the trunks. Not stomping or snarling, just moving. One stopped and looked straight at my window. I dropped to the floor, heart hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. I crawled backward toward the hallway when I heard something that chilled me more than anything else. A knock. Not on the front door this time. On the back window. I hadn't nailed it shut yet, just locked it. The knock came again, slower. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, pause, 3 more. Like a pattern. I held my breath and stayed perfectly still. No lights, no noise. Then, something slid into view across the glass. A face. But not a face. A mask. It was made of skin. Stitched crudely, mouth cut into a jagged smile. Eyes hollow. The thing behind it tilted its head. Then, slowly, it raised one hand and tapped the glass again, once, twice. Then it whispered, barely audible, "Let me in." I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. The mask lingered at the window for maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like 30 years. It just hovered there, perfectly still, watching, waiting. And then it smiled. Not the stitched grin across the leather mask. It smiled with its eyes. They weren't hollow, after all. They were watching me. Glassy, cold, too wide, like it knew I was there. Like it could see through the glass, through the shadows, and right into the fear coiled in my chest. Then it did something I still don't understand. It tapped the window again, gently, like a lullaby rhythm. Then it walked away. No shrieking, no glass breaking, no blood, just silence. I stayed frozen for hours. Knees pulled up to my chest, knife clenched so tightly my fingers went numb. I only moved again once daylight began bleeding through the blinds. I checked the backyard. Nothing. No footprints, no broken glass, no sign that anything had been there at all, except for a smear of red across the outside of the window. Not a word, just a handprint. Long fingers, almost too long. Like whatever was behind that mask hadn't been human anymore. That day, I decided I needed answers. My phone was still off-grid, but I had an old emergency radio from my hiking days. I hooked it up and scanned the frequencies. Most were static. But at 98.1 FM, I heard something. A voice. Male. Calm. Slow. Repeating the same message every 45 seconds. If you are hearing this, you are not alone. Stay inside, avoid the infected. Do not respond to knocking, do not follow voices, do not leave until sunrise. We're working on a solution. A pause. They are not what they used to be. Then the loop restarted. I listened to it 5 times, heart pounding harder with every pass. That final line haunted me. They are not what they used to be. I wanted to believe it meant the creatures used to be people and now they're not. But something about the way it was phrased, something about how the voice lingered on the word used, made me think it was something else entirely. I went around the house again, reinforced the windows, sealed the attic hatch, even nailed a broomstick between the door handles in case something forced its way in. Around noon, I saw movement again, this time through binoculars from my upstairs window. 3 houses down, someone had come outside. A woman. She looked normal, confused, scared, still in her pajamas. She was yelling for help, waving her arms, turning in circles like she wasn't sure which way to run. And then something emerged from the hedge. Not ran, not lunged, it just rose up. It was tall, taller than it should have been, wrapped in what looked like bits of clothing. Shirts, scarves, sleeves. Multiple layers, like it had dressed itself in pieces of the people it had found. The woman screamed and tried to run. Too late. The thing moved with impossible speed, not stumbling like the others. It grabbed her, wrapped those long arms around her shoulders, and pulled her into the hedge. Her scream cut short halfway through. Then silence. I saw something wiggle out of the bush. It was her slipper. That's when I stopped hoping this was just a sickness. This wasn't a virus. This was something worse, something smarter. That night, I didn't wait to hear a knock. I set up motion alarms, DIY ones from my old security gear. I positioned mirrors under windows. I kept a flashlight with red film on the lens so I wouldn't attract attention. But despite everything, they kept coming. Not in huge groups, just one or two. Each night, testing. First, it was more knocking, then scratching. Then they tried talking. At first it was nonsense, garbled sounds that almost formed words. But one night, they used my name. Not once. Not shouted. Whispered. From 3 different sides of the house. In voices that didn't match any person I knew. They said it like they were tasting it. Jordan. I felt something inside me snap that night. I couldn't do this forever. I needed to get out. I needed to find others. Real people. Someone who knew more than me. Someone who could explain what was happening. I waited until sunrise. And for the first time in days, I stepped outside. The air was still, no sounds, no birds, no traffic. Just the distant echo of something, dripping. I moved quickly, keeping low, avoiding open sight lines. I had a crowbar, my red-filtered light, and a backup battery for the radio. I knew where I had to go, Nate's cabin on the edge of the old hunting preserve. He always said, if anything goes wrong, find me there. It was 10 miles away. Through woods I didn't know anymore. And I wasn't sure what waited between here and there. But I couldn't stay, not after last night, not after they learned my name. The streets were empty, but they didn't feel abandoned. You know how you can feel when someone's behind you, even if you don't see them. Multiply that by 10. That's what walking outside felt like now. Every shadow twitched, every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. I kept to the alleys, weaving between backyards and ducking behind dumpsters. The deeper into town I went, the more wrong everything looked. Houses weren't just empty, they were altered. Some had symbols carved into their doors. Same crescent shapes I'd seen scratched onto my mailbox, only now joined by circles, spirals, things that looked like they'd been done in a hurry, or not by human hands. Others had rope strung in weird patterns across the porches. A few had mannequins on their lawns. At least, I thought they were mannequins. Until I saw one blink. I didn't stop moving. At some point, I passed a school. It had been boarded up. A red X was spray-painted on the front doors, along with a message. They learn. No idea who wrote that. I didn't want to know what it meant. It wasn't until I reached the edge of town that I saw the first real daylight survivor. A man standing on a roof holding a flare. He spotted me instantly and pointed, shouting something I couldn't quite hear. I waved both arms and started toward the building, but then his expression changed. He dropped the flare and started pointing behind me. I turned. Something was crawling out of the storm drain. It wasn't fast, it wasn't even walking, it slithered. Its body moved like liquid under loose clothes, arms bending the wrong way, legs trailing behind like they didn't matter. And it was wearing a child's backpack. I ran. Behind me, I heard it screech, not loud, but long and metallic, like a radio signal twisted into sound. I sprinted through a busted chain-link fence, dove into a dry creek bed, and didn't stop until my lungs felt like they were bleeding. By the time I looked back, the thing was gone. But now, I knew. They were active in the day, too. They were just better at hiding. I made it to the forest around dusk. Nate's cabin wasn't far now, maybe an hour through the trees. But that's when things got worse. I found the first trap. It was made of sticks, ropes, and what looked like bone. Hung between two trees like a dream catcher gone wrong. Something had been impaled on it. Something small, maybe a raccoon. Its body wasn't bleeding. Its mouth was, like it had tried to scream until something made it stop. That's when I started hearing the whistling. Low, tuneless, off-key. Not constant, just a short burst every few minutes, coming from different directions. I crouched behind a log and listened. 3 whistles from the left, 1 behind me, 2 up ahead. All at different pitches, like some sort of signal. It wasn't birds, I knew that much. I kept moving, slower now, trying not to step on dry leaves. Every tree I passed had something wrong with it, scratch marks too high for animals, bark peeled in perfect spirals, ropes dangling with trinkets tied to them, spoons, buttons, even pieces of hair. When I finally saw Nate's cabin through the trees, I almost cried. But something stopped me. The front door was wide open, and there were no lights on inside. I crouched at the tree line, scanning for movement, for sound. Nothing. I almost turned back, but then I saw it. A note, taped to the window with blue painter's tape. I crept closer. The note was written in Sharpie. "If I'm gone, don't come in, look in the shed. Anne?" I backed away from the cabin and made my way around to the rear path where Nate kept his tool shed hidden behind brush. It took a minute to find the door. It was covered in branches like someone had tried to disguise it. Inside it was dark. Smelled like oil and old metal. I found a lantern, flicked it on, and nearly dropped it. Nate had been watching them. Drawings covered every wall, sketches of their faces, diagrams of their limbs, maps with circles and notes like, "They mimic," and "Do not respond to crying." He'd been tracking patterns, movements, behavior, sound clusters. One corner was dedicated to photos, grainy night vision stills from trail cameras. One showed a shape with 4 arms. Another showed something hunched, crawling upside down along the underside of a bridge. The last one was labeled, "It saw me." No shape in the frame. Just a pair of glowing eyes staring directly into the camera lens. I found a recorder on the table and hit play. Nate's voice crackled through. "If you're hearing this, it means I'm probably not here anymore. Listen closely. These things aren't just people who got sick, they're wearing people. Like puppets, they're evolving, adapting. Every night they learn a little more. And now they're organizing." He coughed. Something banged in the background. I saw one lead a group. I thought they were just stumbling around. They weren't. They're searching. They're hunting. And I think they're building something. The tape cut out. Silence again. I stood there, shaking, staring at the maps and charts covering the walls. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I stayed locked in Nate's shed, clutching the lantern like it was the only thing keeping the darkness from swallowing me whole. Every gust of wind outside sounded like footsteps. Every creak of the trees felt like something circling the walls. But nothing came. Morning came, pale and weak, and with it a grim decision. I had to keep moving. I couldn't stay in the woods forever. Nate had been studying them. That meant he must have known where others might be, people, survivors, a way out. I packed up what I could, his notes, the trail maps, the radio. One page in the journal was marked with red tape, a map of an old ranger station in the hills. Handwritten above it were the words, "Last signal heard, they might still be there." It was about 20 miles north, deep into the mountains. Farther than I wanted to go. But I didn't have a choice anymore. The forest around the shed was quiet, but it felt like the kind of quiet that comes just before something breaks. The birds were gone. Even the insects had stopped buzzing. As I stepped outside, I noticed something in the dirt. Footprints. Too many. They surrounded the shed, circling it like a pack. They were barefoot and large. Some had toes that looked wrong, split or rearranged. Whatever had been out here, it had come in the night. And for some reason, it didn't break in. Maybe Nate had done something to keep them out. Or maybe they were just watching. Waiting. I hiked all morning, heading north along the ridge trail. It should have been peaceful, blue sky, wind through the trees, but every shadow felt like a trap. I started seeing more of their signs. Hanging shapes from branches, spirals etched into boulders, stacks of bones balanced in strange formations. At one point, I passed a clearing. In the center was a giant figure made entirely of branches and clothing. Human-shaped, but wrong in its proportions. Arms too long, head tilted permanently to one side. At its feet were dozens of objects, shoes, wallets, watches, phones, offerings. That's when I heard it again, the whistling. Farther away this time, but joined by something new, drumming. Not real drums, just the sound of sticks hitting trees. A rhythm, slow and steady, like a signal or a countdown. I didn't stay to find out. I ran. By sunset, I reached the ranger station, or what was left of it. The building had been gutted by fire. Blackened beams jutted out like broken ribs. One of the watchtowers had collapsed, blocking the front path. I almost turned back. But then I heard the voice, crackling from inside my pack. The radio. "Repeat, this is Station 9. Survivors are gathering. We have shelter. We have food. If you can hear this, head northeast to the lake facility. Do not travel at night. Do not bring anyone who speaks with two voices." Then static. I froze. Two voices? I replayed the message, but the radio had gone dead again. Still, it was something. Nate had been right. There were others. Somewhere out there. I stayed the night in the ranger station's basement. It was half flooded but secure. I barricaded the stairs and curled up behind a cabinet with a flashlight and crowbar. I barely slept. But sometime in the early hours, I dreamed. Not a normal dream. It felt inserted. Like something had placed it in my head. I saw faces, distorted, hollow-eyed, floating in darkness, all whispering the same thing over and over. Let us in. I woke up soaked in sweat, heart hammering like a warning bell. I had to move again, before night fell. The trail to the lake facility took me into an area marked Restricted Wildlife Reserve. According to Nate's map, it had been shut down years ago, but the paths were still there, and someone or something had been using them. I found fresh marks in the dirt, dragging signs, scratches on trees 7 feet high. Then I reached the river, and everything changed. There was a bridge, rope and wood. It looked unstable. But halfway across, I saw one. A figure. It wasn't moving, just standing there, head down, arms dangling. It looked like a woman at first. Long hair, torn jacket, one shoe missing. But something was wrong with her neck. It pulsed. Not with breath, with movement. Like something inside was shifting. Then she looked up. Not all the way, just enough for me to see her face. Her eyes were glassy, her mouth hung open. But from inside her throat, something else blinked. I stepped back. The thing took one lurching step forward, and then another. I didn't wait for a third. I turned and ran so hard I almost fell into the ravine beside the trail. My legs burned, lungs on fire, but I didn't stop. Behind me, I heard a new sound. Not the whistle, not the drum, something worse. Laughter. Choked, twisted, too low, too deep. Something inside that woman was laughing, and it wasn't her. I made it to the lake facility just before sundown. From the outside, it looked like a small dam station. One big building, windows covered, tall fences around the back. Smoke drifted from a chimney. There were lights inside. And people. I almost collapsed from relief. I banged on the door and shouted my name. After a long pause, someone opened the outer gate and waved me in. It was a man in his 50s. Beard, tired eyes, holding a flare gun. Behind him were two others, a woman, maybe 40, and a teenager carrying a walkie-talkie and a hunting knife. "Inside," the man said, "now. And keep your mouth shut until we're sure." They locked the doors behind me and patted me down. Not for weapons, for sounds. "Say your name," the woman ordered. "Jordan," I said. Again, "Jordan." They exchanged a look. The older man nodded. "Okay, you're clean, for now." I didn't understand what they meant until I saw the cage. In the far corner of the room behind mesh wire was a figure. Human. Mostly. They were gagged, wrists bound, thrashing softly. Every few seconds, a second voice, raspy and cruel, spoke from somewhere inside their body. It wasn't a growl or a moan. It was language, "Let us in," it said. "We remember you. You left the door open." They kept the creature in the cage. It looked like a man, but the way it moved, the way it twitched, it was like something else was learning to drive a human body for the first time. Like it didn't quite understand how elbows or knees were supposed to bend. The people at the facility, 6 of them in total, didn't speak much. Not to me, not to each other. Most of their time was spent watching that cage or listening to shortwave signals on old radios. I spent my first night in a storage room. Locked in. Not because they didn't trust me, but because, according to them, some things know how to pretend. The teenager, Nora, explained what had happened here. About a week ago, the infection, or whatever it really was, reached the facility. They lost 2 people. Not to bites, not to scratches. To mimicry. One morning, they found one of their own already dead in bed. And yet, he was still walking around the kitchen, making eggs, wearing the same clothes. But he didn't speak, not until someone asked him his name. Then he opened his mouth and said something like, "He is resting. I am using this now." That's when they built the cage. And since then, they'd been studying it. Watching what was inside slowly learn how to behave more human each day. I asked what they thought it was. A virus? A parasite? But Nora just said, "We don't think it's from here." That night, we heard the singing. It came from the woods. Soft, melodic, almost peaceful. Like a lullaby sung in reverse. One of the older women, Cora, sat up and whispered, "They figured out how to call now. We doused the lights. The singing got louder. Then came the whistles, the drums, and something new clicking, like bones knocking together in a pattern. I peeked through the boarded-up window. Shapes moved in the trees, not running, just waiting, circling the facility. One of them held a sign, a piece of cardboard scrawled with charcoal. It said, "We know who you are." That's when the radio flared to life again. A new voice. "If you're out there, you need to leave. You're not safe. The facility has been marked. Repeat, they are marking. It's not about infection anymore, it's about invitation." Then static. We all looked at each other. "Marked?" I asked. "What does that mean?" The older man, Theo, spoke for the first time in hours. "It means they've chosen this place. For what?" He didn't answer. We made a plan to leave before dawn. Pack up, move north, find another facility, maybe the one Nate had mentioned in his notes, the one farther into the mountains. But when morning came, something had changed. The cage was empty. The door was still locked, no signs of struggle. The creature was just gone. No blood, no broken bars, nothing. That's when we checked the rooms. Cora was missing. And in her bed, scribbled across the wall in black ash, were the words, "Do not go outside." But here's the thing. The message wasn't written. It was grown. The letters weren't made of ink or paint, they were veins, pulsing, writhing, sprouting from the wall like they'd always been there, waiting. We burned the room. We didn't speak while we did it. By mid-morning, we were packed and ready, except Theo. He stayed behind. "I've seen enough," he said. "I think this place was chosen for a reason. I think it's calling something." We tried to convince him, but he wouldn't budge. So we left. We traveled by daylight, avoided the roads, stayed out of the valleys. Nora said the higher up we got, the less influence the things had. Maybe it was thinner air, or maybe they just didn't like altitude. We camped in a ranger's watchtower that night. High up, isolated, still intact. And that's when we saw it. Off in the distance, miles away, something huge was moving through the trees. Not a person, not even a group. A structure, walking, carried by dozens of the infected, like ants moving a hive. At its center was a column of black ropes, twisting and pulsing like a nervous system. It was heading toward the facility we'd just left. Theo's facility. We didn't sleep that night. Nora called it a nest. Said they'd seen one once before, years ago, in another country. They thought it was a myth, a story told by isolated researchers. But now they knew it was real, and it was growing. That brings us to now. I'm still alive. We found another station, smaller, deeper into the wilderness, still safe. For now. But it won't last. The signals are changing, the things are spreading, and every time I dream I see them standing outside the walls, holding signs with my name on them. They're learning names. They're learning words. They're learning us. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.